And we are here on the Goddess Got Goals podcast with the delightful Karen Maloney, all the way from Mexico. I think you're my first international, not in an English speaking country, even though you're Irish. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But you are welcome to the Goddess Got Goals podcast. She might even share why she's in Mexico. It's a great story. But we're going to have an amazing conversation, but I want to invite my listeners to get to know you in the way that I've got to know you, so that you can share a little bit about why you do what you do, like what is your story, so that we can get deep diving into this topic that is a little bit deep, ladies, but this needs to be out there. We need to start having these conversations more regularly and without the guilt and shame, which is what we're going to be talking about. So Karen, welcome to the Goddess Got Goals podcast.
Oh, Lisa, it's such a pleasure. And yes, connecting from Mexico, but I was like, oh, I hope you say I'm actually Irish. Not that that matters, but I was like, when I start speaking, it's going to be a letdown going, shouldn't sound very like Mexican speaking. So yeah, it's a pleasure to join as well and have this conversation today. And like that, what can I introduce about myself? I have come to do what I do in working as an inside out coach and an energy therapist and silent practitioner through my own inner journey and discovering. I suppose now I can look back at my life, because again, when you're in it, you don't really know what's happening. But in one sense, the way I look back at my life now as well, I can see, well, I was always the black sheep. I was always a bit different. I was always pulled in different directions to everyone else. And now I can see I always had a really strong intuition, but I didn't have that language at the time. All I thought was, what's wrong with me? Why don't I want what everyone else wants? Why am I always pulled off in some other direction? And, I just totally and utterly lived from my head. But I still somehow always had this inner question. And I can see, I nearly call it, I was on a lifelong spiritual awakening for a long time. But this calling and question of like, is this it? Like, there has to be something else. There has to be another way, And I suppose I started, again, now I can look back and see I was very shut down emotionally and everything. Again, I didn't understand why, but as I got older, it became another curiosity point. I'm like, I don't think everyone else feels like this. So why do I feel like this? And, as the journey unfolded and I went through some really traumatic experiences and I had always been into energy work and, self-help books and like spirituality and esoteric things. And I used to always read books. Books were my savior back in the day when there was no internet. And again, it was like my secret. I just knew I got something from them, even though I couldn't talk about these things with many people. But, and like a lot of people, we all know the things, but we're not walking our talk. And then just through life events and circumstances and different traumas, I just decided, okay, I need to start walking my talk. I need to start putting some of these practices, the things I know, into practice and living them, and seeing, does that bring a shift? And it 1,000,000% did. So then it's like, okay, well, now I have to share it with others who want to know a way as well, because anyone else who's maybe been on this journey, I felt like a raving lunatic for a while to my friends going, oh my God, you have to do this and this. And, when you learn these truths and not just learn them cognitively, you experience a shift internally and in your body, and it all just makes sense. You want to share, but then you realize, okay, everyone's on their journey as well. So I need to share it in a capacity with people who are ready and who want to move through some of their inner stuff and come out the other side. So that's essentially kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, oh my goodness, there was so much in there that I was like, yes, yep, that's exactly what happened. Yes, and I can relate. And I love that you called yourself the black sheep, because I think this podcast, all of our listeners consider themselves the black sheep, the rebels within their families and things, because they do notice that they either feel different or express themselves differently or all of the things you described. Yeah,
whatever.
all of that.
Yeah.
And that's very similar to my journey too. And you've hit the nail on the head when you said that once you've gone through these shifts and then you're interacting with your normal friends, it's either that they feel like they're talking to you in a certain way where they're like pushing an elevator button and suddenly your elevator's not coming up anymore because you're like, that's
Mhm.
you know you've made a shift, and then they're like, why isn't she responding in the same way that
Uh-huh.
she used to respond? Or you're so excited, and you're at 11. I feel like I live my life at 11. I'm quite intense. So I'm like here trying, oh my God, you should try this. And they're all like, whoa.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, I
Has she lost
totally
her
feel you.
mind?
Yeah, well, yeah, a lot of people do think that, but they're still friends with me, and I'm very grateful. But
Yeah.
it's that balance with trying to meet people where they're at the same time, but also just because this stuff can be really exciting. So
Hmm.
so I think that um, I like the way you just called it inner work or inner stuff, because a lot of the time, I think women can, be afraid of this because of the fact that it's like, oh, inner work, am I going to find out this about myself? Am I going to find out that about myself? Or is it going to be scary? Is it going to be whatever? Versus not really. It's stuff that's already there. And yes, some of it might feel uncomfortable, but think of what we're going to get. So what the journey might be. So let's touch on the thing that I heard you say, which was you kind of knew then that you had more of a tap or a link to your intuition, or that's what you think. You spend a lot of time in
Hmm.
your head, which I do
Oh,
too,
yeah.
but you also had that intuition piece. Like, how did you know that, or what about that really kind of worked for you?
It's funny because, like that, me who I was, and I was so shut down. And again, we're not conscious of these connections we make. It's only I can see it now all so clearly that I can put all language to it and see exactly where I was at and what was going on. But when you're through it again, just for anyone to be like, I didn't just get this instant clarity. But I lived from my head. I was shut down. I'd gone through a traumatic experience, and I can see now that my nervous system went into freeze. And I lived my life in freeze. And I was always on edge. And I had this thinking, again, not conscious at the time, that if I can control everything, if I can plan, if I can execute, if I can research, if I can live in my mind, if I can control everything, I'm safe. But that doesn't work. Like, we cannot, all we can control is ourselves. And I ended up burning myself out or whatever. So I had this really strong mind, and my mind was insane. My thoughts used to go a million miles an hour. It did not stop. But yet, and it was really funny because someone asked me years ago, they were like, wow, are you really impulsive, Karen? And not in a million years. But again, because we live in this reality, but we have another energy running through us, the truth of us, the energy, the universe, divine intelligence, God, whatever you want to call it. So I would feel this sensation that I just knew this was the right thing for me. Even though I couldn't logicalize it, I could not make it out in my mind. I just knew it was something for me. And that's all I had. And even though I was terrified, because let me just tell you, fear always comes up and it's okay. We learn ways to move through it. But I just knew, and I couldn't explain it to anyone. I didn't know why I was heading off this way or been pulled in this direction, but there was just something in me that I just had to follow. And again, to my mind, it made no sense, but it was just this feeling. So now I can see it is intuition, and I have it, and it's been guiding me my whole life. We all have it. I'm not special, I'm not unique. But for some reason, it it was always really present in my life. And for some reason, and I can't tell you why, because to my mind, it made no sense. But for some reason, I followed and I followed and I followed and I keep following. And that's why I'm in Mexico. That's why so many things have happened.
Yeah. Well, I
Even the very first time I came to Mexico was because of
because you followed your
being led.
intuition.
Yeah.
So I would love to double back a bit, because I know that we've had this discussion and it was like, oh, it just seems like the story of a million women. So it's a very, I want women to feel a sense of this is quite common. It might not necessarily be necessary, but can you talk a little bit about your trauma response, your burnout life, that stress of what that looked like? Because I think a lot of us think that's how life should be. I hear a lot of like busyness, that constant anxiety. Like, can you describe that little bit of a journey for me so
Yeah.
that you can really help women to relate to that?
Yeah. So again, anyone who, is in that kind of space, feeling like, they can't stop if they're not thinking, if they're not planning, if they're not efforting and hustling really hard, it's never going to happen. And that was me. But again, I can say now when I was in it, it felt so normal to me
Right.
because I had this idea that if I wasn't judging myself or criticizing myself so hard or not being so hard on myself, well, how was I ever going to change? How was I ever going to reach what I wanted to reach and all these things? So let me just say at the time, it was pure normal. I thought I was doing exactly the way you're meant to do it. Again, now I can look back and go, no, it does
Right.
not work. Because again, where did it lead me to? It just led me to total burnout and making wrong decisions. And again, no, I can't say wrong decisions because there's a divine perfection to everything. And everything happened for me for a reason, and I had to take those paths. But at that time, it was just so normal. And anyone, I remember I used to go to my I used to always go for IET and energy therapy, and I trained in it as well. But every time I used to go, like my master teacher, every time she put her hands on my head, she'd be like, "Are you really stressed, Karen? Your head is just like," and, to me, I was not a stressed person. And to
Right.
all my friends, I did not appear as a stressed person. I'd
Yeah.
be cool, calm, and collected outside. But actually, now I look back and go, oh my God, I was a
Hmm.
highly functioning, anxious person because my
Yes.
brain did not stop for a second. I was afraid to rest. Again, I had this idea that I didn't know at the time. I just thought if I stop, I'm not being productive. I'm not being a good human. How am I ever going to
Right.
achieve? I have to
Oh,
prove things to people. I have
I
to
mean,
do,
I'm nodding. Yeah, I'm nodding here
and
because
I've got
same thing
goosebumps.
happened to me. I was getting a cranial sacral like I suppose that's energy and
Hmm.
adjustment type of
Yeah.
session with a friend of mine, and she just put her hands near my head and she went, wow, like what's going on? And I, again, outwardly would have been a very, accomplished,
Yeah.
optimistic, pretty cool, dealing with
I
things,
looked like I had
organized
it all together and all
all
figured out.
together. But so similar. I mean, you're saying the words to me of, I literally thought that I really truly only had value as a good human when I was doing, when I
Yeah,
was productive, when I
totally.
produced something, when
Yeah.
I was achieving something, and it's interesting because this is why I also called my podcast the Goddess Got Goals podcast, because for me, I'm trying to reverse that. Like, it's trying to be like, I don't want to have this masculine push energy towards my achievements. I still want to achieve, and there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with achieving.
Yeah. No.
In fact, I listened to a podcast where the gentleman on it had asked the Dalai Lama, because I thought, okay, this is a good reference. Asked the Dalai Lama, did he still have desires to be better at things? Like, did he want to be
Hmm.
better at meditating? Did he want to be better at, at that? And he's like, yes. He says, of course, I want to be better. So, but it's just, how we do it that's different, right? With that sense. So it's
Yeah.
not that the goals are bad. It's not that
No.
the sense of achievement or trying to be our best self is bad.
No.
It's how we place all that anxiety and judgment and, as you said, all of that stuff on ourselves.
Hmm.
Because ultimately, I agree with you. It's not that it's wrong decisions, but it can just be not good for our bodies,
We just
not
take
good
a
for our
detour. Yeah.
souls. Yeah, it's
And
not
we,
good
yeah,
for the body, not good for the soul,
damage
doesn't
ourselves in
get
the
us there
meantime.
where we want to. Yeah, for sure, for sure. So
But
why
even
do you,
just that point,
yeah,
just let me say what I've learned as well from that point, because again, everything is energy and I love energy. And we all have masculine and feminine energy. And again, I lived in my masculine. But this is a thing that's fed to us from society as well, very subliminally. When we pick it up as kids, it's just programmed into us that, and the masculine is that build, construct,
push,
go,
push.
achieve,
Hmm.
success, keep going, keep going,
Myopic
keep going,
focus. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
But I live there and it's so innate for me and who I am. And even for the masculine, we all have masculine and feminine, they need to balance. So now for me, what has happened is I still have dreams and desires and goals, like 1,000,000%. And we're here to dream. And we actually need to dream bigger and bigger and bigger. We don't dream big enough. And the work is not now me like before. I'm like, okay, I have this dream. So I need to sit down and I need to go through every possible scenario, person, course, da 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 da, da, and I need to exhaust myself to make this happen. No, I set my dream, my goal, and I call them dreams now and desires. I don't even like the word goal. I always had goals, and then I was like, "Oh my god, that's so
Yeah,
masculine."
it is.
Me,
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
when I went through my inner shift, I was like, "Oh my god, everything around me is like in so masculine
So
energy." But anyway,
masculine. Yeah,
so it was like, so now I set my desires and my dreams, and I feel them, and I'm like, okay, and whatever resistances come up, that's my work. It's not give up on my dream. It's not tell myself I'm not good enough. It's feel the resistance that comes up, work through that, and then lean into knowing it is done. And the guidance will come. I will be shown, like I'll have that moment of inspired action, a thought will come up. And then I go into my mask and I'm like, okay, I'm going to action this now. And that's the difference. And that's where we
oh,
don't, we're following our heart, we're following our desires, we're following our guidance because we're always being guided. But it's not that, because again, when I lived in my head, I could, I wasn't able to receive. I didn't take a moment to actually like know what was the path, what was the door to knock on. And that's not to say every time it's an instant yes, no. But synchronicities are common when you're
yeah,
living in alignment. You know, someone will mention something, someone will put a book in front of you, you'll hear a song
yeah.
on the radio and something will spark. You'll be like, oh, that's an idea. And then you go action that.
Yes. Oh, you are right on it. We literally just did a podcast that we called The Tools of Transformation, where I had my first male guest on because I was like, I don't, again, I'm not saying masculine energy, feminine energy, bad, good,
Versus, yeah,
whatever.
no, we
It
have
exists.
both. And they're
So, but
meant
I
to
wanted to
complement.
hear, yeah, I wanted to hear
There's a
from
divine
him.
distinction.
Yeah, totally. And I wanted to hear from him the question which I'm about to ask you, which was, why do you think women have a difficulty with expressing their dreams, goals, and desires? And we've kind of touched on that already. But
Mm-hmm.
what he said was talking about, and he broke it down for him. He said the same thing that you've literally just said, which is, I use, two-part process. I spend a lot of time working my own intuition. And it was so weird to hear a man say intuition for some reason. I was like, oh, that's
Yeah,
really interesting. And he said, and then I move into my masculine energy to take action. And I was like, boom, amazing.
yeah,
Also, why I called my main business Warrior Goddess Kettlebell Training, because for me, it's the both energies.
oh,
You need
totally.
to hang, sometimes this is important to pull on to get it done, but you need this part to nurture and receive it, etc. So
Yeah.
yes, so saying this, that's the question I want to ask you is, why do you think women have a difficulty expressing, desires, dare I say, goals,
Hmm.
those dreams? Why do they have a difficulty expressing them? Like saying, I want something.
Yeah. I think there's many, many reasons. And again, in so many levels, like from even the energetic societal level, again, we're taught that to be soft and to be intuitive and to follow your hearts and desires is like, that's not cool or that's weak. We're taught like, no, we need to have a plan, we need to, and life is not linear, but we're taught like, no, you go to school, you do this, you do that, you buy the house, and this is how you feel worthy, and this is how you live life. And absolutely, that's part of life, but that's not everything. And actually, most of the world, we're living out of alignment with our true selves. I mean, when we kind of fall into that motion, we're not best serving ourselves or others or the world. Like, look at the state we're in, even with
Right.
Mother Earth and how we've destroyed and plundered and everything. But also, I think as well, it's because that feminine energy has always been demonized and stigmatized as weak. So, in order to succeed, and especially when women started moving into the workplace and everything, we had to literally man up in
You
order
do,
to
yeah.
move up the
Yep.
ladder. And not even that, everything is energy and everything passes on as well. So even back in the day, to be seen as a healer or an intuitive, well, once upon a time it was fine, but then when the patriarchy and all this development started, you know we were burned
We
at the
got burned.
stake.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were
pretty
like,
much.
so
Yep.
this energy still lingers because energy cannot be destroyed or created. It has to be transmuted. And the only way it can be transmuted either, this is why we're all incarnated as well, because it needs a vessel, it needs a body. And in order to transmute as well, we have to feel to heal. So that's why I believe as well, we're in a massive global collective awakening as well for the last couple of years. And it is that divine feminine rising again. But because we've got so out of alignment with ourselves, because again, everything is energy and everything has to balance. Energy always has to balance. No matter how that will work, it will always find a way to balance. And we're all living in this same collective space. Like, when you think about it, like we're in a spinning ball in the
Right?
fucking galaxy. What is the energy that's holding all of us in this space? So of course, if there's that's why, every person matters, every thought matters, because
Every micro,
every
yeah, it's the
yeah,
micro
every
and the
insect,
macro.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you think on that level as well, because so many women and so many of us had to forget our intuitive side, forget our like real nurturing, caring, receptive side, and we had to step into the more masculine side. I believe as well that's affected our men, because you find, and even my previous relationships, because it's not about the gender. I'm just talking totally about energies. But now I can see when I was more in my masculine energy, I attracted more feminine guys. And like,
Hmm.
that was never going to work for me because I wanted a divinely masculine guy. So I think we're all just out of whack with each other, because energy always has to balance. So part of this is the big purge, the big cleanup. And it all starts with us individually. And we have to go through it and feel and express and allow ourselves to want what we want. But again, that's the inner work again, because it's the inner belief and the inner trust and the inner confidence to be like, actually, yeah, I do want this, even if people think it's fucking crazy, or most successful people in the world were told they were crazy or that would never work at any one time. So that's why the inner work is crucial, because it's all about us cleaning out our blocks to it. Where am I holding this story from? Why do I have this belief that tells me, oh, that could never happen for me? And again, if someone's already done it, that's proof that it's possible, a million
Right.
percent, for anyone. The only limit always is ourselves. So that's why it's always the inner work. It's always looking at what we hold within and these lower vibrations and frequencies that kind of sabotage us from going
Right.
what we want, because that's what it is all the time. It's some lower frequency or energy or belief we're carrying within ourselves that's actually, holding us back, keeping us repeating the same cycles, whatever it is.
Yeah, and totally 100%. There was so much there. I was like, oh my goodness. You just forget the micro versus the macro effects of
Mm-hmm.
things,
We do.
like that,
We
you
just get
know,
so stuck in physical and this
we
life
get
and
so
this
stuck,
life, and
yeah, and
we don't.
linear versus that it is very much a systems, thing of, and that also gives me power. That makes me feel
Yeah.
empowered that I have the ability to make change because I can make the changes for me. So when
Mm-hmm.
I make the changes for me, because that's what I am in control of and I have the power
Yeah.
over, that ripple effect will continue to cause
Yeah.
the ripples in the macro, in the global, or
Yeah.
the whole universe. Yeah.
Totally.
So what I would love to chat about is, you talked about the blocks. So the stories, the blocks, people call them block stories, limiting beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
etc., negative or low vibrational, etc. And I think the biggest one for women, and this, I don't think it happens as much with men, because again, I've been trying to find this out, going
Yeah.
energy and things like that, is the shame and the guilt, right? So shame and guilt being the two biggest, in my experience, blockers of motivation
Mm-hmm.
to pursue something that you want, to be the best version of you, to do the inner work. Um, One, where do you think that comes from, and how have you been able to help people to move from that shame to self-belief?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, most of what we pick up in limiting beliefs are before the age of 7. And again, we don't even have to have experienced something majorly trauma, because trauma is obviously a loaded word and it hits on so many levels. But a trauma as well for a child could be, left hours after everyone was picked up from school and, you're still standing there. Like, so it hits on so many levels. But what they say as well is, not what they say, it's neuroscience, but our brain, and this is why we all, like, they're so common. Everyone has limiting beliefs. Even if you think you don't, you do, and sometimes when we think we don't, we definitely do, because we're
Definitely,
we're
right?
so blind. And again, there is no right or wrong to it. The only way you know is by doing the inner work. And believe me, I call them blind spots as well, because the amount of times I have like face planted myself after having an inner revelation. And when you have it, I'm like, oh my God, Karen, it was so freaking obvious. but we can't see it. So that's
Be-
why they're
Yes.
subconscious, they're unconscious, they're below our conscious mind. So unless you're doing the inner work, you're not going to know of them, and you're going to think, oh, it's all good, and but it's all their fault, because it'd all be fine if that just worked out, whatever. But no, it's all us, it's all us. But before the age of 7, our brains, we are in theta mode. We don't have the beta critical analyzing mind. So
Right.
theta is when you're being hypnotized. So we are picking up everything, 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 everything from what we're seeing, from what we're witnessing, from what we're being told, subliminally, explicitly, and implicitly. And that is not just from family and friends, that is from school, from education, from religion, from, society as a whole. So, that's a lot going on. And again, we're not conscious of it, but we all pick up these subliminal, like, limiting beliefs of, even there's some general ones like, oh, you know money is hard to come by, or that's not a job for a girl, or that's only boys can do that, or like, there's so many, and they seem like inconsequential. But what happens is, once we have one of these programs, and again, we're not aware. So say, for example, or even shame. So Brene Brown talks about how shame is the fear of disconnection. And obviously, for human survival, in its most simplest terms, and obviously for human survival, we need connection.
Mhm.
But we don't get connection kind of at the mercy of forfeiting who we are. But this is what we learn to do. We learn that from a young age. Oh, in order to be loved, I need to act in this way, or I need to be a good
Right.
little girl. And then I know I get the sweet. So,
Right.
and again, so they can be so, and there is no wrong, because again, obviously, well, yes, there's some people with bad intentions in the world, but genuinely, that's why, even if you were the most conscious parent or whatever in the world, or grew up in a little bubble, you're still going to have things, because the way we don't have that critical mind to think, oh, this is not how you get love or whatever. So we pick up all these like habits and learn behaviors and programs, but then we go through life subconsciously confirming them. So say then, like, we're in school and we're picked last on the sports team or something, then it's like, oh, see, I'm not good enough. People don't want to be around me. And then we learn another way to mold ourselves in order to like fit in and be approved of and feel validated, you know? So it's such,
And then it
it's,
like
yeah,
manifests as an adult in the only way that I feel connected is if you approve of me, if
yeah,
I get the thing, if I get the achievement. Because I
yeah.
literally, you're telling me about my life. Like, as soon as
Because
you said that, I was
all
like,
of us,
that's why we
so
have this
many of us,
story, right? That,
yeah, so
you
many
know,
of us,
you might be in a relationship and have family members, etc., but you only feel connected to your loved ones, etc., when you're doing things
yeah,
and they approve of it, when you're cooking the good meals and they're happy and they're
or
smiling and
unconsciously,
whatever.
yeah.
And that's in that moment you feel connected, but you're almost killing yourself to get there. You're burnt out, you're doing all
I
of
was
these things.
good. That's what I was going to say. That's exactly what happens when we do this. Is what truly happens though is we separate from ourselves.
Yes.
We totally forget that I have a choice, I have desires, I have a life path, I can live my life as I want, I can do as I choose, I can be who I am, I realize I'm enough. We forget all of that. But these are like innate, nearly needs we all have to, feel connected and worthy. But again, it's subconscious. So we will look for all ways to feel validated, to feel to prove like I'm a worthy human, and we end up people pleasing, and we end up, following career paths we don't really like. We end up being in relationships that, there might be a little bit something, but you just put up. We just put up with a life that truly doesn't fill us up. And that's what I can look back as well. I just felt a bit meh. I was like, yeah, it's pretty good, but I didn't feel alive. And the thing
Yes.
is, we're here to feel alive. We can
Yeah.
feel alive no matter what is going on. And we can find that true happiness and that true joy and love on a different level, but it's not conditional. We're not subconsciously bartering or keeping score going, yeah, but if I did this, then I'm going to get this down the line. But this
Yeah.
is what we do
This is
subconsciously
what we do.
when we're
Oh, we
not
do that.
connected to our core, when
Yeah.
we've lost ourselves, when we think we're unworthy, when we're shrouded in shame, and we feel like, well, my opinion's not valuable, or I'm not good enough, so I just have to kind of put up with what comes along. But
And I think it
no.
also even manifests, it manifests in in physical conditions as well. Like,
One
I
million
feel like,
percent.
I was reading the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. I've actually mentioned it on the podcast a couple of times because I'm in love with the book. And he talks about how he had noticed that when people weren't living in their zone of genius, so what you've
Mm-hmm.
called there, their calling, their life's work, whatever you want to call that, but when they weren't allowed to do that by themselves, they didn't allow themselves to express themselves in that way. He says that was manifesting in men as heart attacks, as
Mm-hmm.
severe issues. It was manifesting in women as autoimmune conditions like fibromyalgia and chronic pain, etc., because they weren't living their true self and their energy was so blocked,
Yeah.
and they were so disconnected from themselves or fragmented from themselves that it
Mm-hmm.
was actually causing physical conditions. Have you
Yeah.
seen that?
1,000,000%.
Right.
And that's it, because we're not just a physical body as well. And our body's always communicating with us, but we don't know how to read it. Like when these fatigues show up, again, we normalize everything. Like my high functioning anxiety, I just thought it was normal. I just thought it was the way you achieve, but it wasn't. And so, yeah, illness, any disease is a call for help. It is our body
Yeah.
going, please support me. I'm drowning here. Because our body is the most incredible piece of technology we will ever own in our whole entire lives. But again, we don't know how to use it. And again, straight away when something shows up, we go into victim of, oh, why me? And, this didn't happen. But if we truly just open up our mind and just learn to read it, we can look back and go, oh God, for years I've actually been feeling a bit exhausted, having headaches, feeling fatigue. Like none of these are normal. But again, we all normalize them and we think it's okay. And this is
Like,
why
we wear
I
tired as a
know,
badge. Yeah, we
yeah,
wear tired as a badge, busy as a badge. Yeah.
yeah. And this is why I know now, without a shadow of a doubt, the power of energy work. And it's why I do it as well. Because again, everything is energy for me. It's all energy. Everything is energy. Because I was the perfect candidate. Looking back on how I lived, I was the perfect candidate for some major illness, for some major accident, or for some major depression or something like
Right.
that. And I mean, I've had moments for sure, but I kind of came away unscathed. And that's because every time I really felt in a funk, for some reason, I was always drawn to energy work. Whether
Yes, myself too.
reflexology,
Yeah.
Reiki, like IET. And again, I didn't understand it at the time, but I always knew. I was like, okay, I feel a bit more spacious in my body and calm and relaxed again. I just thought it was a nice little relaxation. But now I can be like, no,
Yeah.
my body was taking what it needed. That was helping me keeping me in balance and my chakras and my energy aligned, so no major dis-ease developed.
Develop.
It's
First. Oh,
numbing.
and I don't think people see it that way because again, it's so normalized that this is just what happens. These
Mm-hmm.
conditions are so common, but it's
Yeah.
not necessary, and that's one of the things I like. So what I'd love to leave, and I know we could talk. I know Karen and I were saying we could talk about this for hours, but what I would like to leave, and I always like to leave people with a sense of action, or what can they do, or what things can they, and we're not, and some of these action points might not be doing action points, might I add.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
may be, so just, we're not putting them into the overaction.
Another checkbox, a
Yeah,
chore.
another tick
Do
box,
this or you're going to fail in life.
right?
No.
But I do like to make it practical. I suppose
Yeah.
that's a better way of putting it. So what would you say is some, quick, not even necessarily quick because this work isn't quick, but I find that when we normalize it or make it at least easy or doable,
Mm-hmm.
that somebody could do now to begin the inner work, or even just bring some awareness to
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah. So it's funny, just even picking up on the last point I mentioned, and something I do all the time with my clients as well, because it's so important and it's been so crucial for me as well, is exactly that. Starting a body awareness, start a communication with your body. And I always say lead with curiosity. Like when we
Love
lead
that.
with curiosity, it's like, and again, so if anyone's feeling any aches or pains, and again, we feel so normal, like, yeah, but I always have tension in my shoulders. It's like, okay, fair enough, but sit with it for a moment. Close your eyes, place your hands on your heart, and just start to take a few slower breaths, like 4 seconds, breathing in through the nose and extend your exhale. Like, so breathe out for a count of 6 and just imagine like you're turning your focus inward into your body, whatever that means for you. Just imagine like you're looking into your body, and then bring your awareness to where you're feeling some tension or some tightness or some pain or some awkwardness. Like it can be any body part. And even just by bringing awareness, and again, just a sense of curiosity, just allow it. Just totally allow it. Just be with it. Just go, oh, yeah, I'm feeling it. And just observe it, allow it, witness it, make space for it. Because again, everything needs to be processed. Like we have to heal it to feel it. And then just be curious and be like, if this part of me could speak, what might it want to reveal to me? And again, just with curiosity, you may not get anything in the first time, but just be like, what might it want to reveal to me? Because again, our body's always talking to us. Everything's a signal, but we don't know how to be in communication. And again, it's been one of the most, because I lived from my head, I was not connected. It was just like, this was just a thing that followed me around. Whereas I see now as well, when we live up here, we're actually just existing. We're actually not living, because our body is always and can only ever be in the right here, right now, in this moment, in the present moment. Whereas in our mind, we can be spinning in any time dimension. And like I can say 99.9% of times now when I spin off as well, and then I come back to my body and I'm like, hang on, 99% of the time, I'm like, oh, that's not even an issue. Like right now, it's all okay. What's next? Like, what's my priority? What's calling me? And I'm like, oh, I just go do that. But again, it's a practice because we have to feel safe in our body, because most of us don't. We spent most of our lives outside of our bodies, and especially women, not feeling safe in our body. So it takes time for us to, because we're calming our nervous system. It's like we're signaling to our body that it's okay. And it's okay that I'm here. And it's okay that I'm present. And it's okay that I don't have to be a million steps ahead of myself in my head all the time. It takes a practice, but just even start that awareness, start that conversation. And again, curiosity.
Love
But
that.
it's like everything. We can do it once and, get something, but it's a it's a way of life.
Practice.
It
Yeah.
doesn't stop. And the
Yeah.
more we do it and the more we do it, the more habitual it becomes. And then, it's just a natural conversation all the time. But even that simple practice, going within, allowing, and or if it's an emotion, because again, the emotions that appear, like anxiety or fear or worry, usually they're kind of secondary. And if we just sit with the moment going, okay, I'm feeling this anxiety in my chest. All right, I'm feeling it. I feel like I can't breathe, but just keep breathing through it. Just imagine like you're releasing it on the exhale. And then with curiosity, if you drop in and be like, what might be the emotion below this? And then often we find, oh my God, it's sadness. And then sometimes we're so embarrassed to admit, going, oh my God, I've been sad this whole time and I didn't realize. But again, we don't need the mind. We don't have to judge. Emotions just want to be felt. We can just name it, we can feel it, and they do dissipate. They do
After about 15
dissipate.
seconds, like
They say
literally,
90 seconds
is it?
scientifically is when the
Oh, really?
surge rises, the biochemical reaction is going in your body, and after 90 seconds, it begins to calm. So you just sit with it, allow it, observe it. We don't have to go back in time. We don't have to connect stories. That the emotion is not even, it's just showing now as a healing to be released. Just breathe through it, let it go, and then you're like, oh, I feel a bit lighter. Great. And
Well,
just do that all the time.
and it's so interesting that the first thing that you said was there's a lot of women can have a fear about going into their bodies, and that was my thing when I first
Mm-hmm.
really started to learn exactly the practice of filling my body. The first thing that I felt was I felt the pain. So I was but the first, I remember my first judgment was, holy hell, if this is how my body feels, I'm going to spend so much money on massages. Because I just didn't realize how much
Yeah.
pain I was feeling. Like my body felt so sore and
Yeah.
achy and whatever. And this was before I started, my health journey. Before I really started to understand that I had to look after my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
At that point, it was just,
It's
as you
our
say, it just
home.
followed me around. Yeah, it was just following me around up until that point. And then when I was like, okay, well now and the practitioner who helped me was like, yeah, now you realize how much you need to care for it. And I was like, oh, that was so interesting to me. And then because I was a mom at that point, it was just when Josh was very young, I remember thinking, I'm a good caretaker. I can take care of this, And
Yeah.
it was at that point that I made the decision to be a good caretaker of me. But it
Yeah.
never occurred to me it sounds so random, but it never occurred to me at that point because I was living so much in here and living so much in that I never saw that. I never made the link
Yeah,
between
we
that.
take it for granted. We just think it's always going to be there. But what you said as well, just to mention to people, like, because I remember for me, although I didn't have physical pain or that I was just like out of my body, but I had a real fear. I was like, I don't want to feel it because I'm afraid to feel, because I felt like I was going to open a Pandora's box and I was going to be
Yes,
swallowed up whole and I'd never come out. But that doesn't
that's
happen either,
exactly
because
how I
again,
felt.
emotions
Yeah.
dissipate. So just knowing that fear is normal, having a bit of resistance is normal, but again, curiosity, just take the few moments. And even that was something I learned during a couple of years ago. I went through a really traumatic breakup where my ex just emailed me and disappeared, and I lost all my stuff and everything as well. But one day I just had that. I came across a Jim Rohn quote, and it said, "Take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live."
Mm-hmm.
And that just set off light bulbs, and not just physically, mentally, socially,
Yes.
spiritually. I'm like, oh, this is my home, because I just lost everything. But I was like, but actually, I still have me. And actually, this is all I can ever have in my whole entire life is me.
Right.
Yes. And that's not to say I want to live in like a hermit. No. But I am my number one priority the whole time. This is my home. This is my temple. And how I treat it and look after it determines everything else.
Yes. Oh, and what a way to end. I'm gonna feel like there should have been a mic drop at that one, because I feel like that's exactly where we come back to all of this. The more
Yeah.
that we can connect, I suppose it is, I don't like using cliches, but it is like the mind body connection, but also that it's more just getting to know ourselves and all of ourselves, the
Isn't that
head,
what
the body,
Jesus said?
the
Know thyself.
yeah, the
And we,
toes,
but the thing about it is, we think we do, because I thought I knew me, but I did not. I knew me by what people's expectations of me, what I was meant to do, what I thought was a good idea. And they're roles we play, but that's not who I am. Like,
no.
there's way more. And that's the true essence of us. That's our soul. That's our spirit. And yeah.
Amazing. Well, absolutely. Honestly, we could
I
make this
know. Yeah.
double the
Just
amount of
keep going.
time because I'm having such a good time talking about this stuff, because I'm like, oh my God, but I have the same story. And yes, this is what I went
And you
through.
know what? So many of us do.
And
We
this is what I
all
love
do
about
in
this.
one
Yeah,
way, shape, or form. It's the exact same story, and it's the exact same thing we all need to do in whatever way we're guided to is coming within, knowing ourselves, clearing out our old fears, our shames, and just living life from our truth, from our soul, irrespective of what anyone else thinks.
absolutely. And it is a journey that one, it's
Doesn't
not
stop.
as scary or not as long or not as arduous as you think it's going to be.
No,
So I definitely invite them. And also, if anything, we're examples of what it might look like on the other side. There are,
for
if other
sure.
people have got through it and they were able to do the work, and like, there's joy over here. I want everybody to know that the
Totally.
rewards are amazing for
So worth it.
how you feel, the joy, the experience of life, the sheer depth of living, right? That's what I feel like.
It's the
I've won.
gift.
It's
It's
the gift.
actually the
I feel like,
gift. We
yeah,
don't even see it.
right.
Yeah.
And like, living in joy is is a choice. And but yeah, that's what the work is. So, oh my goodness, Karen, thank
Totally.
you so much for this wonderful
Amazing.
conversation, and for helping us even just with that one practice, because it might sound so simple, but I promise you it's
Simple or
powerful.
best.
Yes, it's
Everything
super
is so
powerful.
simple at the end of the day. But again, we're so caught in our mind, we think it needs to be harder. And the only way we'll ever truly know the beauty and the simplicity of it is the action. Action is the only thing that's ever going to move us through anything, anything,
Yes.
anything. And there's some lovely music coming in from outside. I don't know if you hear that.
You can hear a little bit. It's Mexico.
Mexico, there's always sounds
Yeah.
happening.
So I would love for our listeners to connect with you. Where can they find you on social media, or where can they hear more about what you talk about?
Yeah. So my website is just karenmaloney.com. And my Instagram as well is Karen Maloney _ after the Y, but Inside Out Coach. And I have a podcast as well called Curiosity and Consciousness, where I've spoken to lots of great people as well, just about this inner journey. And so, yeah, reach out, pop me a message, say hello. And thank you so,
Perfect.
so, so much, Lisa.
Oh, it's been so much fun. As I said, if that timer wasn't going up, I'd be like, let's just keep this going.
Yeah,
But I do like to, it's hard to be succinct when you're this excited. That's why,
I know. I know.
right?
I hear
Too
you. I hear
passionate.
you.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
you're so passionate. But thank you
It's
so much
great to connect
for
though.
being here. Please connect with Karen if this is something that resonated with you. And of course, please share out this podcast to a soul sister or someone who you know could really benefit from this. This is really important for us to get the message out there to help as many as we can, because that's what both of us are here. This is our purpose. This is our
Mhm.
passion, but also that we just want to help, right? And we know that these tools will help you just to feel better, which is really what most of us want deep down inside. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for joining us, and I look
Thank
forward to
you.
catching up with you soon. Thank you all. See you all next week.
Bye.